Healthcare costs. Are you mad about it? So are most Americans, and so is my guest today on Across the Fence. Hello, Vermont. I'm Amy Finley. I was a political science major, and my first job out of school, I worked for a big California HMO. That has since been bought by Blue Shield. We might mention them at some point today. I lasted 3 months at the HMO. That's all the healthcare sausage factory I could take. My guest today has a much stronger stomach. Alex Garlick is an assistant professor of political science at UVM and the author of a new book, Pre-Existing Conditions: How Lobbying Makes American Healthcare More Expensive. Alex Garlick, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Very timely topic. I know we're going to get to these Vermont headlines in a short bit, but we'll start with your book.
Okay.
Really glad to have you here. So how did health policy, how did that become your policy focus?
I worked in Congress in 2017, which were the first 6 months of the Trump administration. And the major thing Congress was working on that time was repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. And so my office was directly thrown into that, and I was in the weeds trying to figure out how this works. And ever since, it's been my focus.
That's been your focus, yeah. Well, so that must have been quite a trial by fire.
It really was.
In the intro to your book, you even have an anecdote about watching Nancy Pelosi take off her shoes to jump for joy.
You have to when she was the minority leader at that point, but that was a big upset. People didn't think the Democrats would be able to stop that bill, and they did stop it, largely by marshaling a lot of public support and getting people informed about what was going on with the ACA and their health care, and it made a big difference.
Yeah, and so then that's when you were in. I'm like, okay, this is it. So let's set the stage for people too. Why is healthcare even a political issue?
Healthcare is a political issue because it's not like other products that you buy. You know, if you go to the farmer's market and you want to buy a carrot and it's like $2, you might get it. If it's $12, you're not going to get it. If you need surgery or your loved one needs surgery and it's $200,000, it's life or death.
It's non-negotiable.
And so it's a different issue than other things on the agenda because legislators, they need to know that their constituents, people need this service and they need to be able to afford it. And it's also more complicated than other products people buy, largely because you have consumers, you have their insurance companies, and you have providers. There's a lot of different players here, and no one really knows what anything costs because you get these weird letters after the fact. It's like, this is what this might have cost. We paid most of that for you. Actually, we want you to pay some, and we want you to pay more later. You know, it's a very bizarre product.
And how are politicians even involved in the process?
Oh, there's many ways. The focus of the book is how the states are involved, but the feds are involved, the states are involved, local public health boards are involved. So there's a lot of different players here. But what I really focus on are state legislators and governors because where you live really matters for how much the healthcare you're going to get costs and how easy it is to access.
Right, and I think that oftentimes we think of it as a national issue, and yet there can be very big health differences in healthcare markets from state to state to state.
That's totally right. Even here within New England, you know, Vermont is different than Maine, is different than New Hampshire.
Yeah. And so that time working as a congressional staffer was obviously very influential on you. What was your takeaway about lobbyists from having worked in that environment?
Yeah, so I did that after I finished my PhD. My PhD was studying, you know, how lobbyists and interest groups and legislators work in the abstract. When I actually got there and you know, on my first day in office, I was handed a confusing issue and they're like, well, call the lobbyists and figure out what's going on here. And that was the moment I realized that, oh, legislators are more dependent on lobbyists than I initially assumed, or that I think even the other political scientists had been kind of concluding for years. And so the more I dug into it, the more I found that there's actually ways that lobbyists are influencing the process that political scientists had overlooked.
Yeah, okay. And so one of the things, and so you're talking about it in the book, you argue that lobbyists are particularly effective at limiting what you call cost containment policies, which I take to mean that they're very good at trying to keep us, or lobbyists are good at keeping politicians from doing anything about rising costs. You know, we want to elaborate about that a little?
Yeah, so, you know, when I just mentioned that, you know, political science had misunderstood what lobbyists can and can't do. They're not great at snapping their fingers and getting legislators to do things. What they're very good at is keeping legislators from acting.
So keeping legislators. So basically the inaction that most of us are sort of upset about in politics, that's something lobbyists are like, this is great, we like that.
And
don't do anything.
And so when it comes to healthcare finance, as you can imagine, if lobbyists are good from keeping legislators from acting, they're not able to rein in costs, and then we're going to naturally see more and more inflation.
So in other words, there's creep. Creep is happening, the inflation is happening, and the lobbyists are basically trying to suppress the political actors from doing much about it.
Yeah, because if you look at the policies we go into the book, and the book is not a prescription for any one policy to be a silver bullet to fix things, but if we mostly see things like, can hospitals form monopolies in different state markets, or do pharmaceutical manufacturers have to tell people how much they're charging for their drugs? You can see how the lobbyists get into these issues, which are pretty complex, and that complexity makes it difficult for the public or the media to understand, and therefore legislators do not get comfortable on the issue, and then they'd rather not act than act, then leading to healthcare inflation.
Which almost sounds logical. Human nature, this is a complex topic. It could be very risky for me to go and take a particular stance, and so maybe the more cautious approach is going to be more beneficial for me in the long run.
Yeah,
which is sad.
I think that can be fair. Going back to the 2017 repeal and replace, one of the arguments that Democrats made was that sure, the Republicans want to repeal the bill, but they didn't have a real replacement plan afterwards. And so that caution, I think, in that case, really resonated with people because people didn't want to lose 24 million people having health insurance with no plan afterwards. So I think sometimes that can be a winning argument. The issue with the book, though, is in general, across all 50 states, more often than not, these cost containment efforts tend to fail over and over again. So I think we have to look at what is the root issue there. And I think the root issue is that these lobbyists are getting in there, getting in the ear of legislators, and not allowing them to get confident or keeping them from being confident about regulating the market.
So of course then the dichotomy here is that politicians always sound very mad about runaway healthcare costs. So what's going on there? Like, why the discrepancy?
I think they sound mad about it because they know it's a huge issue. But then when time comes to act, they get in there and then they get a call from a hospital lobbyist, from the pharmaceutical lobby, from an insurance company, and then they get cold feet when it comes time to act. The more ambitious plans to rein in healthcare costs are going to step on someone's toes. And the people that are getting their toes stepped on also tend to give a lot of money to their campaigns and are always in their ear and always in their office. And that's where I think legislators get tripped up.
So what are some of the big factors that are driving rising healthcare costs right now? I know we're going to get into this too when we talk about Vermont.
I think a major thing has been the emergence of monopoly powers in different parts of the healthcare industry. So you can think about hospital systems, and we're getting the emergence of these major hospital networks, Vermont, elsewhere, where major academic centers, and they're technically nonprofits, but they've gobbled up a lot of small community hospitals, and that's reduced consumer choice, but then it's also given a lot of pricing power to the biggest and wealthiest of these institutions. And it's not just in hospitals. I think we have also seen that in the pharmaceutical supply chain, where when you get a prescription medication, think about all the different firms and corporations that are involved in that transaction. It's not just you and the pharmaceutical manufacturer, it's the manufacturer, it's your insurance company, it's the national retail pharmacy chains like CVS, Walgreens, et cetera. It's your local chain. And then there's these shadowy organizations called pharmacy benefit managers. And according to the people in Congress and in the states right now, they actually might be the biggest issue along the path here. And the kicker is no one knows who's getting what revenue along the system except for the people involved. Legislators can't even access that information. So in both of those different parts of the industry, hospitals and the pharmaceutical supply chain, we're getting the emergence of these major monopoly powers. 2 of the 10 biggest companies in the entire United States are these hybrid pharmaceutical benefit managers, insurance companies, and retail pharmacies. So this has become
all this integration.
It's been a major business model that is making costs more expensive for people.
And so in Vermont, that's probably a good segue into Vermont. What's going on here?
Well, healthcare costs are expensive in Vermont. And it's not just a blue liberal state thing. Even within New England, healthcare costs per capita, last time we measured it, are higher in Vermont than they are in New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. So costs are expensive here. And if you think about, well, why is Vermont different than Maine or New Hampshire? Part of it is we do have an older population. And, I think if you want to talk about really solving healthcare costs, we need to get more ambitious and start talking about what is the cost of living here and what's the housing issue? How can we get young people to stay?
All the other structural issues,
But for right now, let's talk about healthcare. Let's talk about the one thing we can control is that the healthcare market in Vermont is pretty concentrated. On the side of the state we're in over here in Burlington, there's really only one major hospital system.
And not a lot of insurance providers as well. I mean,
Exactly.
I said Blue Shield, Blue Cross at the beginning. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like Blue Shield, Blue Cross is kind of it's another dominant player here in our market.
Yeah, BCBS of Vermont is one of the only insurance companies that plays in nearly every market. You know, a couple years back, one of the larger national chains got into a dispute with UVM and said they wouldn't cover UVM Health Network.
Right.
And then those people that live here, it's like, what are their choices?
Right.
You know, and so when you have a hospital system with that kind of pricing power, it gives it a lot of leverage to set the prices that that they want, that the market will bear, not so much what works for the consumer.
So there have been some recent headlines, lots of shakeups happening with regards to the UVM Health Network right now.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the lobbyists are not winning? What's happening right now with regards to lobbying and what's happening in Vermont?
So despite being, a Vermont-based professor, it's kind of a difficult case to explain because the Vermont legislature in some ways has taken the more aggressive steps to rein prices in that liberal or progressive
we have the
policy
Care Board,
analysts. Yeah,
right?
exactly. So
Okay.
there's a powerful regulator, the Green Mountain Care Board, that has the ability to look at proposals for revenue and negotiate or reject them. And so the current dispute that we're seeing that has really come to a head in the past year and in recent weeks here is between the Green Mountain Care Board and UVM Health Network.
Yeah.
And specifically the Care Board told the UVM Health Network it needs to reduce its revenue for the upcoming year by about $85 million.
Yeah.
And not to get too in the weeds of that decision, it involves an overpayment from last year, but what we're seeing is the regulator really kind of taking a stand that the costs are getting too high for Vermonters.
Which is good. I mean, it's nice that we have that regulatory body that is trying to do that oversight protection.
But it's a difficult issue.
But it's a difficult
because
issue,
one of the things I talk about in the book is this idea of structural power.
Yeah.
And in a benign sense, structural power is that legislators, they act in what they think is the interest of major institutions in their state. And so something that's good for UVM Health Network, who's a major employer, probably the biggest employer in this area, is probably good for the state. And the flip side of structural power, though, is it allows major institutions to then, I don't want to say make threats, but take policy actions that wouldn't be beneficial for the economy.
We're going to be watching this play out, I think, for a while.
Yeah, well, because
it's an exciting time. Actually, I think it's a good
absolutely.
time to stay tuned to your news. Also, a good time to pick up Alex's book. The book is Pre-Existing Conditions: How Lobbying Makes American Healthcare More Expensive. Look for it at your local library, or it's available through Oxford University Press. The info is on the screen. Alex, that was fun and depressing all at the same time. I think that's probably some of the best shows, have that unique blend, the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
As always, Vermont, thank you for learning and exploring with me today, and thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.